191, Arizona, the old Route 666. My name is Robert Miller. I'm a man of facts and figures. I don't believe in ghosts, and I definitely don't believe in urban legends. But after what happened on October 14th, my world has become a very dark place. We were driving back from a wedding, my wife, Sarah, our daughter, Angela, my son, Sam, and my father, George. We were on the main highway, but the GPS showed a massive pile-up 3 exits ahead. I was tired, and the kids were restless. Against my father's advice, I decided to take an old logging road that cut through the Arizona desert to join back with Route 191. "Robert, that road isn't on the maps for a reason," my dad warned. But I didn't listen. I saw the shortcut sign and turned the wheel. Within minutes, the asphalt turned to cracked gravel. The sky turned a bruised purple, and the desert grew unnaturally silent. We were officially off the grid. About 10 miles in, the car started acting up. The dashboard lights flickered, and the engine let out a wet, sputtering sound. I pulled over. In the beam of my headlights, I saw a woman standing by the side of the road. She was wearing a tattered white dress, soaking wet despite the dry desert air. I rolled down the window to ask if she needed help, but as soon as the glass cleared, she was gone. Just vanished. My daughter screamed. She said she saw the woman's face in the rearview mirror for a split second, but the face was just a smooth, featureless surface of pale skin. I managed to get the engine started again, but we only made it another mile before it died completely. That's when a man appeared from the darkness. He claimed to be a mechanic from a nearby town. He was too helpful, too polite. Against my better judgment, we let him fix the alternator and gave him a lift. But something about the way he looked at my son made my skin crawl. As we drove, the man, he called himself Bill, started talking. He didn't talk about cars. He talked about the mimic. "You folks shouldn't have taken this road," he whispered. "The mimic lives here. It's an entity that can take any form. It sees your memories, it hears your voices, and it uses them to lure you into its trap." He told us that a sheriff had found a body on this road last week, a mechanic who had been murdered and his form borrowed by the entity. I felt a chill run down my spine. I looked at Bill in the front seat. He wasn't breathing. I checked the rearview mirror, and for a second, his reflection showed a creature with elongated limbs and hollow, black pits for eyes. By the time I blinked, he was gone. The seat was empty. The door hadn't even opened. That's when the loop started. We kept driving, desperate to find the main road. I passed a green sign, mile marker 33. 5 minutes later, I passed it again. Then again. No matter how fast I drove or which way I turned, we kept returning to that same stretch of road. The psychology of it started to break us. My wife started crying, my dad was chanting prayers, and my son, Sam, was staring blankly out the window. Every time we passed marker 33, I saw something new on the side of the road. First, it was a pair of empty shoes. Then, it was our own luggage. Finally, I saw a body lying face down in the dirt. It was wearing my jacket. I tried to turn the car around, but the road behind us didn't exist anymore. There was only a wall of thick, black fog. We were trapped in a figure eight of space and time. In the distance, we saw lights. A diner. The Sunset Grill. It looked like a 1950s oasis in the middle of nowhere. My kids were starving, and I was desperate. But as we pulled into the parking lot, my father grabbed my arm. "Robert, look at the windows," he whispered. I looked through my camera phone's lens. To the naked eye, the diner was full of happy people eating. But through the screen, the diner was a rotted, burnt-out husk. The people inside were skeletons, their jaws unhinged, standing perfectly still in the dark. My son Sam didn't wait. He stepped out of the car, lured by the smell of pancakes that wasn't really there. He started walking toward the darkness. I grabbed him just before he stepped into the diner, and the moment my hand touched his shoulder, he turned around. But it wasn't Sam. It was the featureless woman from the road. She hissed, a sound like steam escaping a pipe, and dissolved into salt. Just as the darkness was closing in, a police cruiser appeared. Deputy Garrett. He told us he'd been tracking our signal. He led us to an old ranger station, a safe house protected by salt lines and ancient symbols. He told us the Bill we met was indeed the murdered mechanic. The mimic had been hunting us for hours, trying to separate us one by one. But the horror wasn't over. While we were inside, my father George walked in from the back room. But I could see my father outside, standing with the deputy. "Robert, let me in," the men at the door said. Both voices were identical. I remembered what the deputy said, "The mimic can't stand the truth." I asked both fathers a question only my real dad would know. One stumbled. One growled. The deputy fired a specialized round, and the creature shrieked, vanishing into the night. We waited for sunrise. When the light hit the road, the loop was gone. We drove back to civilization and never looked back. But sometimes, when I'm driving at night and I see my reflection in the window, it doesn't blink when I do. And I know, the mimic is still out there, waiting for its next ride. National Forest, New Mexico. My name is James Dalton. I'm a high school history teacher, and I've always taught my kids that history is something you respect. But on our trip through New Mexico, my youngest son, Leo, learned that some history doesn't want to be remembered, it wants to be fed. We were driving toward Albuquerque when the GPS glitched, sending us down a dirt road into the heart of the Gila National Forest. We stumbled upon a ruin, an ancient stone structure that looked like a mixture of a Spanish mission and a much older, darker temple. My father, who was traveling with us, insisted we stop to pay our respects. "There's an energy here, James. Something ancient," he said. I should have kept driving. As we stepped onto the hallowed ground, the air grew heavy with the smell of wet fur and copper. We were greeted by an old man, a guardian of the site. He looked terrified. He told us we could stay for 5 minutes, but we were strictly forbidden from touching anything, especially the back altar. My wife and I were admiring the architecture. Leo wandered off. He's 10, curious, and stubborn. He found his way to the back of the ruins. On a pedestal of black obsidian sat a horrific object, a petrified, oversized animal claw, 6 inches long, with metallic, rusted talons. He thought it was a cool souvenir. He pocketed it. The moment he touched it, the sun dipped below the horizon, and the guardian's eyes went wide. He started chanting in a language I didn't recognize. He told us to leave immediately. He didn't check our pockets, he just pointed to the exit with a trembling hand. We piled back into our Ford Transit, thinking the old man was just a local eccentric. We didn't realize that Leo hadn't just taken a bone, he had taken the anchor for a demonic entity the locals call the Iron Grip. 2 hours into the night drive, the atmosphere in the van shifted. Leo started shivering, his skin turning a sickly, grayish-blue. He complained of a fever, but his forehead was ice-cold. Then, my daughter, Mia, noticed it first. She looked at the upholstery of the back seat. "Dad, did Sam do this?" I looked back. The heavy-duty leather was shredded. For long, deep gouges ran from the ceiling to the floor, as if a massive bird of prey had tried to tear its way into the vehicle. But Sam was asleep. Suddenly, the van's internal lights flickered. My wife, Elena, looked at her reflection in her compact mirror and screamed. For a split second, she didn't see her own face. She saw a withered, ancient woman with long, iron-tipped fingers reaching out from the shadows of the back seat. When she turned around, there was nothing there. Just the smell of rotting meat. The entity began to isolate us. Leo started speaking in a voice that wasn't his, a rasping, guttural tone that sounded like stones grinding together. He kept pointing at the rear-view mirror, claiming a tall lady was running alongside the car at 60 miles an hour. I looked out the window. In the moonlight, I saw a blur. A figure, 10 feet tall, with impossibly long limbs, was keeping pace with us, its iron claws sparking against the asphalt. Mia and Sam started showing physical signs of the curse. They had identical scratch marks on their necks and arms, bruises that looked like they were being gripped by invisible hands. I realized then that the relic Leo stole was draining the life force of my children to manifest the entity fully into our world. We were a moving pantry for a demon. Tried to turn the van around, but the steering wheel locked. Our driver, a local guide we had hired named Miller, began to convulse. His eyes rolled back into his head, showing only whites. He slammed his foot on the gas, the van roaring to 90 miles per hour on a winding mountain road. "She's here. She's inside," he shrieked. Through the windshield, a massive, clawed hand smashed through the glass, grabbing Miller by the throat. It wasn't a solid creature, it was a shadow given form by the relic in Leo's pocket. The van swerved toward a cliff. I lunged for the wheel, fighting Miller's possessed strength. My father grabbed Leo's backpack, found the talon, and realized what had happened. "We have to get rid of it, James. It's the anchor." He tried to throw it out the window, but the air pressure inside the van became so intense it pinned him to the seat. The entity wanted its prize back, but it wanted us too. Just as we were about to crash, the van's engine died. We skidded to a halt in front of a roadside shrine. The guardian from the ruins, the shaman, was standing there, as if he had been waiting for us. He knew we wouldn't make it far. He took the talon from Leo, his hands bleeding as the metal reacted to his presence. He placed it on a sacred stone and began a ritual of binding. He used a silver crucifix and sage, calling upon the spirit of the forest to reclaim its monster. The entity, the Iron Grip, manifested one last time, a towering nightmare of shadow and steel. It let out a sound that shattered the van's windows. But as the shaman completed the prayer, the shadow was sucked back into the petrified bone. The shaman told us to leave and never return to New Mexico. We drove away, the sun rising over the desert. Leo's fever broke instantly. But to this day, none of my children can be in a room with a mirror. Because they say that sometimes, if the light hits the glass just right, they can still see those iron claws, waiting for someone else to pick up the talon. Wood Forest, Kentucky, the Cold Road stretch. There is a stretch of road in rural Kentucky known as the Cold Road. Locals don't drive it after sunset. They say decades ago, a woman named Mother Abigail lived in a shack deep in the Blackwood Forest. She was a weeper, someone who lamented for the dead. But one night, the story goes, she locked a family of travelers inside a shed and burned them alive. Among them was a 6-year-old boy. The townspeople didn't wait for a trial. They dragged Abigail to the center of the forest, beat her with stones, and hung her from a twisted oak tree. But as she died, she didn't scream for mercy. She laughed. She told them she hadn't killed humans, she had burned a vessel. Since then, Abigail's spirit is said to wander the cold road, waiting to finish the work she started. It was 2014. My name is Nitty, and I was part of a 6-person film crew from the University of Kentucky. We were young, arrogant, and looking for a thesis project that would go viral. We decided to spend a full night on the cold road. Our lead was Arya, a paranormal junkie who brought along all the gear, EMF meters, thermal cameras, and digital recorders. We had our cameraman Gaurav, our brave girl Joy, and our couple, Megan and Sunny. When we stopped at a local diner for directions, the old man behind the counter turned pale. "That road is a gateway to hell," he whispered. "The witch will take you. She'll eat your souls." We just laughed it off, thinking it was great flavor text for our documentary. We didn't know the forest was already watching us before we even stepped off the pavement. We set up our first base camp near an old, ruined shrine. Arya pulled out the EMF reader. For those who don't know, it detects electromagnetic fields. Ghosts are said to disrupt them. The needle didn't just flicker, it slammed into the red. Suddenly, the temperature dropped. In the middle of a Kentucky summer, our breath began to hitch in white clouds. That's when we saw the tree. It was the same twisted oak from the legend. Despite the heat, the bark was ice cold to the touch. Sonny, being the joker of the group, decided to hide behind it and jump out to scare Megan. It worked, but when he came back into the light, he looked different. His eyes were bloodshot, and he kept scratching at his palms. Panic set in. Megan ran off after Sonny. Joy went after Megan. Within minutes, our group of 6 was fractured. I stayed with Arya and Gaurav. We tried to find the others, but the forest began to loop. We passed the same burnt-out shed 3 times in 20 minutes. That's when we saw her. Mother Abigail. She wasn't a rotting corpse or a monstrous witch. She was a shadow, her face glowing with a faint, embers-like light. She didn't attack us. She pointed toward the ritual circle and whispered one word, vessel. We found Megan first. She was sitting in the center of the sigil, staring at nothing. When she looked up, her eyes were solid black. She told us that Sonny wasn't Sonny anymore. The child Abigail had burned years ago wasn't a victim, it was an ancient entity that needed a body to walk the earth again. And we had just brought it 5 new options. In the final moments of that night, we found the boy. He was standing by the twisted oak, holding Sonny's hand. Sonny looked like a puppet on strings, his jaw unhinged. The boy looked innocent, but Abigail's ghost appeared behind us, screaming for us to burn him. It was a choice, trust the witch or save our friend. Arya realized the truth. He grabbed a flare and threw it at the dry brush around the boy. As the flames rose, the child's skin didn't burn, it peeled away to reveal a skeletal, multi-limbed demon. It shrieked in a voice that sounded like 1,000 dying souls. Only 3 of us made it out of Blackwood Forest that morning. Megan, Sonny, and Joy were gone, vanished into the ash. The police found nothing but 3 piles of scorched clothes. Abigail's ghost is gone now, her work finished. But sometimes, when I see a child on the side of the road, I don't look at their face. I look at their hands, to see if their fingers are just a little too long.